you know, we don't have to, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I have plenty. They can work on Judaism stuff, or they can work on stuff resistance. Yeah.
אם את יכולה לבוא עכשיו כי הם רוצים להקדים קצת.
I think she's calling him out.
100%, בסדר. אז בואי כי הם רוצים להקדים קצת. ביי. ביי. Okay, she'll be here in like 10 minutes. Is it okay?
10 minutes, okay. All right, we'll have them work on something.
Yeah,
in those 10
I'm
minutes.
going out. I'm going from the room too. I just, open to see that everything works. So.
Okay, so great. Okay.
Yes. Well, if you need something, just shout and I'll come.
Okay, sounds good.
הבאתי לך חזרה ספר אחד.
One second. Hi, Duran.
Hi, Ronile. I'm here because mine.
Hi, Bracha.
Here is your mommy.
Yeah.
Do you hear me? Oh, that's it.
Yes. Duran, you are on mute, just so you know, for this moment.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Very well.
Okay, perfect. So, sorry about the confusion.
One second. Okay, you can talk.
Mama, can you bring that, can you move the camera down a little bit?
Gilly? She says אי אפשר. זה מסך, אי אפשר.
Can you move up a little bit?
We're getting set. Here, maybe it was a little too early to.
Here I am.
Okay, much better.
Okay, good, you
Okay.
see. All you have to do is ask.
Yeah.
קודם כל, כוס מים. I'm glad you also brought the book.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so how do we start? אני רק רוצה שתזכור לשאול אותי שאלות.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm with you.
Okay, HM, whenever you're ready.
Introduce me. קודם כל תציג אותי.
HM, whenever you're ready. Are we ready?
Ready.
Yes, so we are all here. Here's our class. Sophia, do you want to wave?
Yeah.
Oh, she's being a little shy. We're all here, and I just started reading the start of chapter 1 of your book
I'm
to
glad.
set the scene.
Yes, I'm very
But yes,
glad.
we are so grateful. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. And we are here to listen, and we're excited about the interview format with you
Duran,
and
yeah.
Duran.
Okay.
All
So
I can say, it's my honor and my pleasure to come and talk to you and tell you about things that happened to me, even though I was only 4 years old. So a lot of the stuff that you will hear from me was told to me, but I experienced some of them. And I wrote it in that book, which the hero is my brother, Benjamin, who saved my life. I'll tell you in a moment. And I am waiting for you, Ronila, my son.
Okay. So first of all, good morning, everybody. This
morning.
is my mom, Bracha. Bracha means blessing in Hebrew. My mom wrote a book that HM started reading to you about. This is the experience of her family. I think that it's a little bit of a different experience than what most people think about when they think about the Holocaust, because most people, when they think about the Holocaust, think about the concentration camps and the death camps and things like that. And what's unique about my family's story from that perspective is that while initially they were taken to ghettos and the kids and the women were taken to ghettos, and the
men were taken to the forest.
The men were taken to forced labor camps.
I'll tell you all about that.
Right. They at some point they just decided to rebel, and they escaped, and they were fighting back, and so they were living in the forest and fighting the Nazis from the forest. So let me introduce. Let me start, Mom. Tell me about the area where you guys lived.
I was born in the Ukraine, but in the Western Ukraine, near Kiev. And after World War I, this area was under Polish rule. And then things changed, and it became known to us that the communist Russians will take over. I lived there in a small place called Malinsk. Malini in Ukrainian is,
Berries.
say again?
Berries, forest berries.
Berries, that's right, because we lived next to a forest, and in the forest there were a lot of berries. It was a small township village kind of a thing. There were in the 20 Jewish families, but also non-Jewish families. First of all, I want you to understand that I was 4 years old, and even though I wrote this book and I'm writing now my 5th book, most of the stuff in the book was told to me by my mother and by my brother, Binyamin. God bless him, he's now 94 years old, he lives in Tel Aviv. And you will hear how it all came about. But a lot of the stuff, I was 4 years old. So it less real experience and more things that I was told. I also want you to understand that my family, the men of our family, we were in the forest, we escaped from the ghetto, and I'll come to the point. And they fought the Germans as much as they could. They were partisans. Do you know what is a partisan? A partisan is a member of a body detached from light troops, making forays and harassing an enemy. So this is what my father and his brothers and our little group were while we were in the forest. As I said again, most of the things were told to me by my mother and my brother, who's 10 years older than I. And I wrote about it because to me it was very important to put through the message. Yes, 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazis, but there were also Jewish partisan fighters. In Warsaw, there was a group that fought against. In Kiev, in other places, there were small groups of Jews that fought. So not all the Jews were taken and murdered by the Nazis. And so we lived in this little place called Marinsk. It was a sort of township, tiny, 20 Jewish families and about another 15, 20 non-Jewish Ukrainian families. Also, I want you to understand one thing. Every Jewish person who lived and came out alive from the Holocaust, it usually is a story about a miracle on the one hand, and on the other hand, also a story about very good people, Ukrainian people in my case, that farmers that helped the Jewish people just because they liked, not because they were paid. In a moment, you will hear what happened to us. Anyway, first, after World War I, this area was ruled by the Polish. Even my brother, the gymnasium was Polish. Were taught in Polish. And then we were told in the 30s that the Russian Communist Party is coming to the Ukraine and will now be the ruler of that area. Now, we were told that the Russians, when they come to a house, you have 2 cows, one stays with you and one is for us. When they see something that they like, they take it. So my father and his brothers, they decided they dug a hole at the edge of the river and they hid there all sorts of things. Before the Polish army left, my father and his brothers, they bought 2 guns and ammunition. So now they had guns and ammunition. And in that hiding place, they buried additional white
sheets and a blanket.
Sheets and white sheets. That's the important part. And blankets and additional extra clothing. And my mother's candlesticks, silver, and anything that was worth was buried in there. Eventually, it will be dug out for our use. And then the Russian came. They were nice. They were not horrid. They came to our house. They had dinner with us and so on. I tell about it all in the book. And then came World War II. Then came the Nazis, They took us to a larger city, Berezne, which was like 24 kilometers from where I was born, where our family lived, which was called Malinsk. In Ukrainian, it means a little thing, small. And they took us, women, children, old parents, old people, to a ghetto in a place called Berezne. It was not a very tight, locked-in ghetto. It was a ghetto.
Let me just explain. A ghetto is usually a small, secluded area that's separated from the rest of the town,
Yes.
where they concentrate people in large
Jewish
numbers.
People.
And,
Jewish people.
Yeah, and then, well, in this case, it was the Jewish people, and that's where. So they kind of stuck them all together into a very little area and just squeezed them in.
Right. And the word ghetto is actually a word that was for the Middle Ages, because the Jews, even after the Roman and during, they were also living in ghettos. Anyway, the point is that Yimach Shemam, the Nazis came, and everything changed. They took the men, the able-bodied men, into the forest because the Nazis didn't have any oil left. They didn't have pecham,
Coal. Coal for heating.
Oh, right. So they needed wood. So they took all the able-bodied men, not only from our place, from all over, Jewish mostly, to work in the forest to cut the trees so they could use it in the trains. They already were at war, so they needed that the trains should be running properly. And us, the women, children, old men, they took to another little town, much bigger, where they had a ghetto. It was called Berezne. And that's where they put in a apartment of 3 rooms, let's say, they put 4 families with the children and everything. So you can imagine that it wasn't the most comfortable thing of life. We were, my father's family were rich people, and they had a factory in which they made materials. They used to buy wool from the farmers, and in the factory they made from it
blankets.
They made from stuff that they can make coats, like military coats and blankets and so on. And the person who ran this factory was a German, but not a Nazi. When the Nazis came, they told him to continue because they need what the factory was making. But so they left him in place while the father and his brothers were in the forest, while we were in the ghetto. He used to come from time to time to us to the ghetto and bring. I was at that time 4 years old. My brother Binyamin, who's the hero, pick up the Sefer, who's the hero of this book, Binyamin.
That's my mom's book that I saw. I thought that HM has in
A
her hand.
story of a Jewish partisan.
Yeah,
boy.
they have the book there, Mama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were in the Berezne ghetto, and they used to come and bring us some extra food, especially milk. For me, I was 4 years old. And then one day he came out late August and told my mother, Gveret Mania, my mother's name was Miriam, but in Polish, Mania, you must leave the ghetto. Tomorrow, the Einsatzgruppen, the Nazi Einsatzgruppen are coming to our area. And the Nazi Einsatzgruppen were the ones that murdered the Jews.
So the Einsatzgruppen were basically the the executioners. They were the people who would just go into an area and just kill everybody.
Mostly everybody Jewish.
Yeah, right.
Because the Ukrainian people, some of them worked with them. On the other end, but at the same time, there were Ukrainian farmers who helped Jewish people, who gave them a place to hide. That's what happened to us. When my mother, when this person came and told my mom that the Einsatzgruppen are coming and that she should leave the ghetto, my mother went over to talk to my grandfather, the father of my father. And he said, oh, come on, the German people are educated. They are not Ukrainian pogrom makers. Never mind. But my brother, Binyamin, the hero of my book, he took my hand and he walked me, he told me, actually, he put me on his shoulders and he walked out of the ghetto. Naturally, my mom ran after us. Naturally, my sister, Dvora, who was later killed, I'll tell you about it, ran after us. We walked some distance to a nearby village where we had a Ukrainian friend. He hid us. We slept in the
barn.
We slept in the barn where downstairs, down on the down were the cows, his cows, and we slept above in the cash.
In the hay.
In the hay.
Yeah.
And basically, we were lucky in that. 2 or 3 days later, the Nazi murderers came and they took out close to 3,000 Jewish people from the ghetto. They brought them next to they prepared ahead of time such
they dug out a mass grave.
Mass graves, 3,000
yeah.
people. And they brought the Jewish people there and they just shot them and they fell straight into those graves. But by that time, we were not there anymore. We meaning my mom, my brother, myself, and all the men were in the forest.
Again, but you did lose family, so your grandparents stayed.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. My grandfather,
yeah,
and my grandmother, and 2 of their daughters, my father's sisters, and one of them had a child. And all the, we were only 20 families, so we were Jewish families, so we were like family. So when they were murdered, it was like family was killed. That was a fact. But we found this farmer hid us in his house. We stayed there for 2 days. Meanwhile, the men in the forest heard about the killing of the Jewish ghetto Jews from the ghetto.
So let me remind everybody. So the Nazis separated the kids and the elderly and the women and sent them to the ghetto. The men they took too deep into the forest for the forced labor camps. And there was no communication between those 2 camps.
No communication. But somehow the word about the murder came to those men in the forest. My father was the oldest among them. So they said They wanted to know what really happened to their families. So they wanted to go to Berezne to see what happened. My father told them, wait, I live this area. I know this area and everybody knows me. I will go and find out and come back to you. Meanwhile, my uncles, Avrum and Moshe, they took the rest of the men to a place in the forest where my father told them to stay until he comes back with the information, the real information of what really happened to their families. Well, he came, he heard, he saw, and he told us later that he felt so terrible, you know, that by Jewish religion, if somebody dies, you have to make a kriya, tear your clothes,
Yeah,
and say Kaddish. And say Kaddish. After he heard what happened, he went into a forest area and he said, to say Kaddish, you need 10 people in the shul, in the Bet Knesset. But now I call you 3 Moshe, this 3 Avrum, this 3. He gave 9 trees, he gave them a Jewish names. So now he had 10 people that he could say Kaddish, and he said Kaddish for us in the forest with the trees. And then somehow he went back to that farmer who hid us and discovered that we were alive. Can you imagine that? And he stayed with us another day, and then he said, now come with me to the forest. And being a practical man, he took from the farmer a cooking pot, he took from the farmer certain things that we could use while being in the forest, because by then it was just our family and those men that joined us. So he took from, he was allowed to take, but he took from the farmer things that we could, because when you have a pot, you can cook a soup. You can do things that if you don't have a cooking pot, you can do them. And we came to the forest. This was August. And that first year, the men from the forest joined us. And that first year, we lived in the forest as best as we could and managed as best as we could. My sister, Dvora, who was later killed, even took me, when the spring came, she took me to the forest and she showed me pitriot, mushrooms, and she showed me that the beautiful red mushrooms are actually poison. You have to eat to find gray, brown mushrooms. Those you can pick and those we can cook and eat. So you see, there are things, and this is something that I remember that was not just told to me. This is how we spent the first year in that forest, just the men, some of the men, and then, but then my father connected a partisan, a fighter that was a member of the General
Medvedev,
yeah, General Medvedev. He had a fighting unit. They had guns. In fact, an airplane used to come and bring additional fighting guns and ammunition for his partisan group. So when the winter was ended, my father took us and we walked over, we had to cross the river. All this is written up in the book. And we came, and General Medvedev allowed all the men that came with us, and my sister, who was by then 18, to join the fighting unit. While we, the women, we lived in little huts. And we helped out, like my mother would get from the general, the person in charge, she would get flour, and she would get salt and stuff, and she would make
Bread or whatever. Yeah. Bread, food.
Yeah, she made this thing from which you make the food, the bread.
The dough. Yeah. Okay.
But she made the dough. She let us rise, and the next day we would walk to a Ukrainian forest, to a Ukrainian
market.
Not a market, kfar,
A little village.
A village that was totally destroyed, but one house, the oven was still working. So my mother would come with the dough she prepared the night before, and she would bake there those rolls for the fighters. This is something that I remember because she worked there and I worked with her, and my brother Binyamin worked with us. And we were there until those rolls were ready, and we would come back. Anyway, after we joined the General Medvedev's fighting unit, I mean the men, and we lived next to them. Actually, we from age 4+ until age 6.5, that's where I lived. And now I must tell you a little, I would call it a joke. I was a very lively little girl, and in the class, I came to Israel, I was 10 years old. I went to school and I did something, and the teacher said, Bracha, how are you behaving? Where did you grow up in the forest? And I said, Ken Hamora, yes, teacher. And she thought that I am being putzpanit.
That she was talking back, yeah, that she was being a smarty pants.
And she sent me to
she sent to the principal's office.
The principal's office, he should punish me because I'm fresh.
So let me. I
just want to finish this in a moment.
Okay.
I came and I said, please, I wasn't fresh from age 4 till age 6.5. I grew up in the forest. He took me by hand, went back to where
the teacher.
The teacher was, and this was already happened when I was in the school. And he said, she wasn't fresh to you. She told you the truth. And let me tell you guys, since then, I could do anything that I wanted. The teacher didn't see. So this is something that life has the good, and life has also a lot of bad, but also some good. Yeah,
so okay, so let's do a quick recap here. So they again, they were living peacefully in their village. Life was happy. Everything was good. At some point in the summer of 1941, the Nazis came and took control of the area. They had invaded that area and rounded up all the Jews. They separated the men from the rest of the family, sent the men to the working camps, sent the women and the rest to the kids and the elderly to the ghettos. That went on for a few months. At some point, my mom through my grandmother and my uncle through their connections heard that the entire ghetto, several thousand people.
Actually, the guy who ran the factory of the woolens,
right,
was a German. He came and told my mother that the Einsatzgruppen, the Nazi murderers, are coming tomorrow or the after tomorrow. Leave the ghetto.
Yeah.
And my mother went to my grandfather. She said, I cannot live without him. 1 second. And she told him, come on, live with us. That's what he told us to do, to leave the ghetto. And my grandfather said, come on, the Germans are educated people. They will not do the
I want to move the story forward. Okay, we talked about this. So now they escaped. The men found out that the ghetto was
my father found out.
and then my grandmother and the rest of the small group of people who escaped heard that the men were somehow, destroyed. They really didn't know what was going on with them, and yet miraculously they managed to connect and escape into the forest and live like this.
So they did not escape. We escaped.
Right.
They were murdered.
Right, and so they ran into the forest and lived there for about a year, hiding from the Germans, but also attacking them
Right.
until they were able. So they were a very small group, and then at some point they connected with a larger, more organized group that was led by a Russian general, a very famous general. His name was General Medvedev. And so this is where, and then, the men were organized into fighting groups, and the women and children were left behind, but they took care of the camp. So they took care of
tried to help
and everything else. So that's where the story picks up again.
I wanted to, the point is that quite soon enough, my aunt, my father's brother's wife joined us as well. Now the Russians helped the Medvedev. They used to send ammunition, guns and ammunitions and some extra food. And they landed with airplanes from Moscow, and they used to take the injured fighters to Moscow, and they offered my mother and my aunt to come to go with them. I mean, they would take us, the children, to Moscow to be safe. Now my aunt did agree, and Rosette, my cousin, who later you met, I think, in the States, she was taken to Moscow. She studied there, but she also, half a day they studied and half a day they worked in a factory of ammunition and stuff of this nature for the war effort. My mother did not want to separate from me. She did not agree that I should go to Moscow. So I stayed with them until the end of the war. When the Russians finally came and freed us, we went back to our area. We lived in Berezne, a larger type of village, half city. And there, whoever Jew survived, we lived there. But we wanted to get to Israel. I come from a Zionist family. My grandfather, my mother's father lived here, and her brothers. And our aim was to go to Israel. And to do that, Moscow, you had to have the proper papers, which we didn't. But if you paid enough money to some Pakit, he would give you the proper papers, but you had to learn your new name according to what was written in the papers. So my mother, I was at that time, first of all, my mother did not allow me to go to the first grade. She was afraid to be separated from me. But we were already practically after the war. The war was still in Europe, in all the world, but not in our area. And so she taught me at home to read Russian words, otiyot, and she taught me mathematica, cheshbon. So she was my teacher, but she would not let me go to school. She was afraid. Before that, my sister unfortunately was killed. So that was a very strong reason not to separate from me.
So I want you to tell a little bit about life in the forest. How did you guys survive, especially that first year?
Yeah.
The second year already, where it was
we were already
a little more organized, and you were getting
Right.
you're getting support from outside, but the first year you guys
Okay,
had
so
nothing and you had to survive completely on your wits and on your good.
here is what I'm telling you. You remember that I told you that the man hid buried all sorts of things inside the next to the forest. So,
Mama, sit back so we can see your face.
oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So, okay. So the men went to that place. They dug out all the stuff. When they came, it was still winter, so they had the warm clothing and blankets. But when I said the white sheet, it was very important because when it is snowing and everything is white, and you can walk in the forest putting on a white sheet on you, then you are
Disguise.
not seen.
Yes.
And they dug out whatever was in there. There was extra clothing, there was extra, all sorts of goodies that eventually, or even before that we joined the General Medvedev, my parents, they had, I say again, there were very good Ukrainian farmers who helped. So they would go and bring something, even a candle or a silver candle or something to some farmer, a Ukrainian farmer, and get for this they would get some bread or some milk or something that was that we could eat. And at that time, even though my father was a religious person, you ate everything, even if it was basar shel chazir, a pig.
So whether it was kosher or not, they ate it.
Whether kosher or not,
you guys also dug holes and lived in holes in the ground.
Yes. We dug a hole. We lived actually in a hole in which they established a chimney, so they made fire inside that cave sort of thing, and we could start a fire.
Yeah.
You never started a fire. You never start a fire when it's visible. You do it either late at night or something, so the smoke is not really seen from afar. And that was the time when my mother and my sister, Dvora, they did some cooking and whatever. All this underground in a sort of a cave.
And remember everybody, this is the winter in Ukraine. Very harsh, very cold, lots of snow, very, very difficult, and you're still trying to survive these harsh conditions and keep everybody going. And while they were basically being hunted by the Germans, so they had to make sure that they wouldn't get caught, and then at the same time try to they were also trying to fight back. I want you to tell about the story.
Just one moment.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was 4 years old. It was very important. I should not cry. Nobody should hear a child crying in the forest. There were some things that in order to survive, we had to adapt and do certain things. I will tell you just a little story. My mom, she baked those lahmaniyot.
The breads, the little noodles.
And she showed me an end of the bread and said, my Yiddish name is Brian Dele. You see, Brian Dele, this is for you for tomorrow for breakfast. And I said, but mommy, I'm hungry now. She gave me the bread. This is family, love. That's all I can say. Okay, go ahead, ask.
Okay, so Mama, we have only about 10 minutes. Right. So I wanted to, Heidi Marie, I got your message. So I want you to tell the story about your, when you got sick and what happened with your sister.
Okay, when we joined General Medvedev's fighting partisans, my sister was fighting, and I took sick. I was at that time something like 5 maybe. So my father spoke to one of his Ukrainian farmers, and he said, because we lived in such huts, and it was winter, it was cold. So the farmer agreed that I and my mom should come and stay with him, so I should get well. And my father brought us there, and we stayed with him. And then he told naturally Dvora, my sister, who was then 18 plus, that where we are, and she said, "Oh, I would like to see my mom and my baby sister." And he said, "Okay, come with me." And they came to that house where we were staying. But evidently somebody saw that my father brought us, and he evidently told it to the Ukrainian people, the ones that worked with the Nazis.
Okay, and then just a little side note here. My grandfather, my mom's dad, because he was the local leader of this partisan fighting group,
So
there was a big
the
ransom.
father of my father, the father, on my side, he was in Israel.
Oh, your father. So my grandfather. So there was a big ransom on his head. So they were looking for him, and they wanted, there was a good sum of money that was awarded for anyone who would catch him, would kill him.
They gave food. Because money not always could buy anything. If they came and they gave you bread and they gave you flour and they gave you things to make food, that was more important than anything else. And that's why many Ukrainians did go to the Nazis and told them that here and here a Jew is hiding, and they would come and kill them. That Nazi. No,
so someone gave away. Okay, go ahead.
One more thing. If, like we stayed in that farmer's house, if he was a farmer, Ukrainian, was caught hiding a Jew, not only would they kill the Jew, but they also killed the farmer and his family, those bloody Nazis. So you see, that was totally not humane, if there was any other word for it.
So, so there were my mom, who's now a little girl still, with my grandmother, and they were hiding at this farmer's house.
Your grandmother.
And they were hiding at the house, and my mom's father, my grandfather, and his eldest daughter came to visit. Someone saw them coming, so they.
It's all grandfather on your father's side. On my side, they were in Israel.
But okay. So they came to the house, and and someone informed that they were there, and so the Nazis came storming in.
Right.
Okay, Mama.
And then, being that my sister wanted to come, to see my mother and me, he came with us. My father took her to that house where we were, but he told her, "Wait, don't come. I'll go there and see that everything is fine. I'll tell you to come and join us." That's what he did. He came. And evidently somebody informed the Nazis about it. The Nazis waited for him because, as you said, there was a big ransom for giving him to the Nazis, over to the Nazis. And they started shooting. He managed to run out through one window. And my sister, who was waiting at the edge, saw him running, so she came also to see what's happening, and the bloody Nazi shot and killed her. And me, with the heat, I had the fever, they just threw me into the snow outside, figuring I'll die anyway, not worth using up a bullet on me. After they left, but my sister was killed. My father managed to escape and join again the people, the fighters of the General Medvedev. the farmer who saw all this in the next door went after the Nazis left. He went out and he saw that I was still alive. He took me to his house. He took my sister more inside the forest and sort of covered her with, sort of buried her. And she had a ring that my mother gave her on her 18th birthday. So he took that off. And when my father came, this farmer told my father, your baby daughter is in my house, she's well. And your other daughter is dead, because she was still there. So my father asked him to take the body of my sister. He took off the ring and gave it to my father, as I told you. And my father took me, and he took that Ukrainian family with him to the forest, because the Nazis would kill them for giving us shelter. And anyway, so this was the lucky way. I just want to tell you, on my way to Israel, we came with papers, house papers, as called me out,
Immigration papers.
right, but they were not that. So I had a different name there because they gave us a different last name. And so my mother had to teach me. I was all together like 6 years plus. So she says, my real name is Brindele, but in the papers I had some other name. So she would say, Brindele, come here. If I came, she would say, no, that's not good. But if she called me but that other name, Shendele or whatever, and I would come, she would give me something sweet in my mouth and said, yes, that's what you are. This is how you teach a child of 6 to a name. And then when we escaped, we came to the border, and there was a Polish or Russia, I don't know, some border guards, and they asked each one for the name. And my mother was, I hope she'll remember that she's not Brindele, that she's Shendele. But they didn't even ask me. So they let us go, and we managed to get to Poland, to Lodz, and from there to East German, to Berlin, that was totally destroyed. And every time that we went by a house that was, my brother would say, Magia lahem, they deserve this. And we eventually came to Israel. I was 10 years old. My brother was in the army already. And we started a new life.
Yeah, that's it, and that's a different book. Mama, I want. we don't have a lot of time left. Yeah, we don't have a lot of time left. HM, I don't know if you want to, if you still want to have some questions.
Please.
If not, we can.
Please, if you have questions, ask. Anybody? Yes, Shailot?
Yeah, hold on. So you're muted.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
No, not
so we have a question. Let's see, let's do this. I want to exit full screen. How do I do that? Okay, we have a question about where again exactly was the forest that you and your family hid in?
It was in the Ukraine, but the more western Ukraine, closer to Poland, not the eastern part that was closer to Russia. So for us, the natural escape way, we wanted to get to Israel, like period. But
so the area where they lived is sort of the northwest part of what's called of Ukraine today. So it's close to the
Polish
Belarus and
not Belarus, Poland. Belarus is there, Poland is there. So our area, in fact, my brother went to high school in Polish. That was the high school in our area.
Yeah.
So this was more Polish, and we lived more under, but we had to hide from the communist Russians as well, mind you. And we were lucky enough, and we said again, there were good people who helped us, and that's how I survived and my family survived. My sister unfortunately was killed, and naturally all our families and friends in the ghetto were murdered. But we came to Israel and started a new life.
And any other questions, HM?
Bracha, if you had a message for our young people in the room that could be like a lesson from your experience, what would you share with our students?
Yes, as I said again, there were good people, farmers, not educated professors, who helped, not just us. I had friends who survived that they helped Jewish people just because they were humane. And all I can say is for the young generation that's growing up, no matter what life will bring, try to be humane. Try to help somebody that needs the help. This is my message. This is my message also that people should know that during the war, there were Jewish partisans who fought the Nazis. This is another thing that is important for me. I give lectures, especially to young people at high schools, and I said, there was a group of Jewish fighters who did fight the Nazis in the forest as partisans and try to help anybody who needs help, no matter what, Arab, Jew. In Israel, we have everybody. I used to work in a school where we had Bedouin and never mind. We try to live in Israel as much as possible, no matter who we are, as one people who try to live peacefully together. This is my message.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Bracha. Yeah, thank you, Duran. Duran, is there something else you would like to?
Thank you. And remember, being humane is important.
Help those who need it. What you see, see the humanity in other people.
Exactly.
Yes. Important. This will make us human. I have no other word.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much. Duran, I'll be in touch with you to debrief this and send you the recording of this talk.
Class, and if you have more questions, ask Doron.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, darling. I love you. It's okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Be well, everybody. No corona. This is not
no corona, right? No corona.
It is healthy hunting us. So I'm always saying no corona. And another thing, have an optimistic outlook in life.